All right, we're back. We are WEBD6201 at Durham College, and it's the winter 2020 semester, and it's week 1. And we're talking about course intro and setup. This is us. Right, and this is me. My name is Tom. I've been teaching since 2011. I've got a background in software engineering. One of the things I love to do is make games. So I've got kind of a game dev background as well. But I've taught JavaScript for a long time, done some web development as well. And I record all my classes, which is what I'm doing right now. So welcome. So this week what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about kind of the course outline. So what is this course about? I think you've already kind of know about what this course is about, yes? All right, and then we're going to be talking about tool setup. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is your laptop is going to be kind of key into kind of getting this thing going. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, so I'm not using Visual Studio, right? And we're going to be doing JavaScript from the get-go, right? So a really good thing about, because you're here, and there's no one else really here, just you and I, you're going to get like a one-on-one kind of lesson, which is pretty awesome. From a tool setup perspective, we're going to be using Git and Github. So all the stuff that you're going to be doing, which is all individual assignments, is you're going to be kind of uploading with Git and GitHub. So are you familiar with Git and GitHub?
No,
not really. So we're going to be talking about what that is. So it's a version control or source control system. I'm going to get you to download that. We're also going to be using Nodejs. So one of the things in this course is we have JavaScript on the front end, right? And then we're going to have JavaScript on the back end. So you may be familiar with HTML and CSS. JavaScript is kind of that third component that gives us behavior. And what we normally do is we create a web page, and then JavaScript gives us that behavioral component, and then we have some kind of server on the back end. And a lot of times, it's PHP, right? It's kind of some kind of PHP server. We use an AMP stack. We're going to talk about stacks tomorrow. So we have Apache, MySQL, PHP. Here, we're not doing that. We're using JavaScript on the front end, JavaScript in the middle, and JavaScript on the back end. Almost like a full JavaScript stack. And this is what this course is kind of about. It's kind of a blend of a little bit of older technology, so jQuery, as well as newer technologies, which is Node.js, right? So it's kind of a really cool kind of blend of that. Okay, and then we're going to be talking about progressive enhancement. I'm probably going to get to that tomorrow because there's a lot of setup stuff today. And then we're going to be kind of doing stuff interactively throughout the time. So I'm going to kind of review HTML and CSS. We're going to be doing kind of an intro into JavaScript syntax today and tomorrow. We're going to do some JavaScript instructions, simple stuff like that, as well as talk about something called the document object model, which you should be somewhat familiar with if you've done HTML and CSS. Okay? So let's get to the outline first, because I like to kind of look at that. And here's the outline. So again, this outline was not created by me, but we're going to follow it. So again, what this course does is it's primarily client-side scripting with JavaScript. Okay, that's what it primarily does. And we're also going to use something called jQuery, which is a JavaScript library. It's a little older, and for the most part, jQuery isn't as used anymore in the industry. And the reason for that is because CSS and HTML and JavaScript are at the point now where we don't need jQuery so much. In the past, jQuery filled a gap. It was a library that was created for programmers to make it, and for non-programmers to make it really easy to do stuff in JavaScript, because JavaScript was like really super hard before. Now it's not as hard. Hey, I like this. Check your billing information. Yeah, it's really super hard, right? And it's not so hard anymore, right? It's the point now where things are much easier, much simpler. And we're also going to be using something called Ajax, which is kind of giving more kind of a rich application environment with our web apps that we're going to make, right? Usually what Ajax does is it creates things like auto page loading, and it also does things like read files from our web server and stuff like that. That's what Ajax can let us do. But now, it used to be called asynchronous JavaScript and XML. How you doing? But now it's not called asynchronous JavaScript in XML. It's really just Ajax. We just call it Ajax. Very simple. All right. And then again, we kind of send and receive data from the server. We kind of can use Ajax to combine and access databases as well. That's one thing we can do, or other data stores, especially things like JSON data. And JSON would be like JavaScript object notation, stuff written in a certain format that basically describes our data. And usually it's somewhere like a file that's on the server. Okay, so that's kind of what we're covering on the first half. As we move toward the second half of semester, and we're going to talk about this in a second, we're going to learn Node.js. And Node.js is based off something called the Google V8 engine. And what it is it's JavaScript on the back end. So again, PHP, 80% coverage across all websites still. JavaScript and Node.js is making kind of like kind of strides, or getting more and more market share, kind of from a web development perspective. So this is really good. And why is this? We're going to talk about this tomorrow a little bit more as well. It's because in the past, you were learning HTML, CSS, a little bit of JavaScript. You had to learn some kind of SQL server, so some kind of SQL query language, SQL, right? Then on top of that, you had to learn PHP for the back end, a little bit of Apache for the server. So like 6 different things you had to learn. And people thought that was absolutely crazy, right? So there's been an evolution because JavaScript has become so good. We have JavaScript on the front end with HTML and CSS. You still need to know those 3 things. But then we have JavaScript on the database and JavaScript on the server. So it's all JavaScript, right? Which is awesome, right? That makes your learning a little bit better. And also, JavaScript can do a lot of stuff now that it couldn't do, like we talked about earlier. So that's something that we're going to be covering in this course. I'm just going to skip down to the evaluations. So this course is interesting in that from an evaluation perspective, we're going to just have a bunch of labs for the most part, right? And some tests. So we're going to have 4 labs with 5%. Your first lab is going to come next week, okay? It'll be something that you take home and then you kind of hand in, all right? That's what it's going to be. So like a mini assignment, 5%. And then you'll have some labs that are worth 7.5%. I believe lab 2 is one of those. So a little bit bigger, that require a little bit more in-depth kind of learning. Okay, so that's going to be 4 labs at 7.5%. Okay, so if you measure that, that means that it's 50% of your work is labs. And then we have 4 tests. 2 tests at 10%, the first 2 tests. 1 kind of a smaller test at 7.5%, and then the final test, which is 12.5%, which will be the final week of class. Okay, so that's kind of how things are set up. Test 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have this little slush fund, that's what I call it, which is a kind of a participation attendance thing. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to have in-class exercises starting next week. So next week when you guys come in, I'm going to give you something to do. You have to hand it in class, and when you do, it's worth 1%. Okay? And it's literally something that says, like, whatever we do in class, just hand that in. Like one of those, okay? And as long as you do that, we're good to go. You'll get your 10% participation marks. Okay, so it kind of makes it kind of nice from that perspective. One thing that I'm doing, that you're seeing me doing right now, is I'm recording my class. Right, so during your classes on Wednesdays and Thursdays, both those classes, those 4 hours, I'm going to be recording all the stuff that I did on Mondays and Tuesdays, so that all the students have the same material. And the reason why I'm doing that is because for a couple of reasons. One, let's look at the book. If I'm not wrong, the book is this book by John Duckett. It's an okay book. Okay, I'm not going to tell you it's an awesome book. And if I was to look this up let's look it up on Amazon. So John Duckett, JavaScript, as an example. If you look that up on Amazon, right? So I'm going to buy this, JavaScript and jQuery. It's a kind of an older book, right? I mean, if you look through it, it's like June 30th, 2014. We're in 2020, 6 years old. So some of the same stuff that applied back then, I mean, even back then in 2014, jQuery was kind of on the down. It was kind of getting, less and less attention in 2014. I think actually jQuery has been, the kind of a peak for jQuery was maybe around 2010, right? From what I remember. So so jQuery was huge. JavaScript is really important. It's actually gone up in terms of like one of the most popular languages in the world, right? So from that perspective, it's relevant. I think the format of the book, though, may not be relevant 100% to everybody here, right? So in terms of the way it's presented, I don't think the material is wrong. I think just presentation-wise, it's not full of code for me. I prefer books that are like, shows you the code, shows you what to do, that kind of thing. So it's not my type of book. However, there is valuable information in it, and I think it's worthwhile to look at it. But I'm not going to make you buy it. Please don't buy the book. It's available online for free. If you looked at this, right, it says you can get it from your library, right, which is totally cool. You can also get it through your public library. It's available there too, a lot of times, and through Safari Books Online. So those three kind of areas that you can get it for free. So again, I wouldn't recommend buying the book. It's required, but it's something that, because it's relevant to what we're doing here, but it's not something that I'm going to get you to buy. So on that, the recordings that I'm going to make are super relevant to what you're going to need to do. So whatever I tell you to do is what I'm going to ask you to follow. The stuff that I do in class, one thing I don't do is I'm not going to necessarily read all the PowerPoints. I don't do that. I actually do interactive coding in class with you. And that's good and bad. It's good because you get to see how the code is written. On the downside, you need to keep up. And so I record my classes just in case I go too fast, because then you won't know what to do, or maybe I'm just too fast in general. So then you can always go back and watch the recording, and it'll be done live after this class. So this class goes from 3 to 5, so at 5 o'clock or thereabouts, after it's processed on YouTube, it's going to be available. I'm going to post a link on DC Connect so that you're going to have that. Okay. So let's go back down in terms of what we're doing week to week. So just like I mentioned, week 1, again, it's like an intro. We're going to be talking about HTML and how JavaScript enhances stuff. This is this day, today, and tomorrow. We're going to be talking about this stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to select, modify, and DOM elements. I'm going to hit adding new DOM elements next week, okay, for a reason. Because I want to kind of get you guys to absorb how to do everything here, as well as make sure that your setup is good, right? We have a lot of time. Notice that the evaluation was supposed to be this week, was some kind of interactive exercise. I'm going to push that off to next week for a couple reasons. One, I'm getting new students in the class, even now, right? That's one thing. And the second thing that I'm getting is people are moving around and stuff like that as well. So for example, in my first section, which is on Mondays and Tuesdays, I had people coming in on day 2. And, as an example, they weren't ready to do the interactive exercise that I was going to give them because they didn't do the setup, which is what you guys are going to do today. Okay? So we're going to do the setup next week. And then starting next week, you'll probably get Lab 1. Again, it'll be a take-home thing that you take away. You do Lab 1. I'll post Lab 1 during class next week, as well as an interactive exercise that's going to be done in class. I'll have some time for you guys to do it during our week next week. And then usually what you do is you get a week to do it. So you get a little assignment, you go away, you do it, and then you come back. And it's worth like 5%. Okay? So that's the lab. And then what we do is we do a bunch of that. So next week we're going to be talking more about event handlers, more DOM manipulation as well. I'm going to be talking about that, as well as HTML5 forms, how to do forms with JavaScript and validation. I'm going to be talking about that next week as well. Notice the book chapters that it covers. Like this first week covers like book chapters 1 through 5. That's what I'm telling you. That the book that we were given is like, we're going to kind of use it as a review of HTML5, CSS, and some JavaScript. And then you can see that next week is like, it covers like, chapters 6 and 13. So there's a kind of jumps around a little bit, which is totally fine. We're going to continue in week 3. We're going to be talking about something new. JavaScript is actually based on something called ECMAScript. That's the language it was based off of. And ECMAScript has evolved. JavaScript for a long time was kind of stagnant. It didn't really move too much or change. But basically the community has really pushed it forward. Again, it is open source. It is not led by a Microsoft or Google or anything like that. It is like led by the community, and there's a kind of an organization that takes care of ECMAScript 6, And ECMAScript 6, which is the new version of JavaScript that includes things like class-like structures that we might be used to if you did C# or Java. You're going to see some of those class-like structures in different kinds of ways of declaring variables and all that kind of stuff. That stuff was all introduced early on in 2015. So 2015, 2016, we've got 5 years from then till now, and now we're moving into ECMAScript 7, ECMAScript 8. Like it's further down. So that's why it says ECMAScript 6 and beyond. New enhancements to JavaScript from then to now. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about in week 3. And from an evaluation perspective, it doesn't show anything, but again, be prepared for interactive exercises every single week starting next week. Something we're going to do in class. I'm going to get you guys something very simple, hand it in, that kind of thing. And then in week 4, we're going to have a first test, and it's going to be based on JavaScript, the stuff that I've talked about. So ECMAScript 6. You're going to get some JavaScript for DOM manipulation, a very simple test as an example. Now, it talks about this test should take the entire time, and week 4 is dedicated to the test. To me, it's pretty long. I mean, there are some concepts that we can cover. Typically, what I like to do is I'd like to do tests that are practical. So I'm going to get you guys to code something in class. It'll almost be like an in-class assignment that'll get you guys to do. And then what I'll try and do during before the end of class is mark you. So kind of give you your mark back right away. So you'll have kind of a sense of how did I do in the test. The test won't take like the entire time. That's what I'm hoping. I'll probably gear it for probably an hour and a half or something like that. So it'll be like one, kind of class. It might take one entire class, and that's it. And then the next class, we'll talk about your mark and how you guys did, kind of thing. So there is no other activities planned for this, but we probably will do some kind of other learnings during this time. So I'm gonna, even though it shows like, hey, all we're doing is a test, there's other stuff that I'm gonna include. I might even do on day 1, I might do a little bit of a review of what I'm gonna be covering on day 2. So let's say if we do our test for you guys, it'll be Thursday. For the first group, it'll probably be Tuesday. So I'll do a kind of a review on Wednesday for you, and then the test will be on Thursday. Like it'll be one of those, okay? And then we're into week 5. Okay, in week 5, we're going to start talking about jQuery. And again, like I said, a little bit of an older technology. We're actually going to download and install jQuery today and tomorrow. Like we need that because without jQuery, there's certain things you can't do to make your website look nice. At that point, we're also going to have lab number 2 given to you, and it's going to be all around jQuery, okay, and how jQuery interacts with elements on the page. Okay? And then as we go forward, week 6, more jQuery, how to kind of show and hide content, different kinds of jQuery plugins that we can use, and so on, animations with jQuery and that kind of thing, and maybe trying to do stuff that jQuery does with just vanilla JavaScript. So, okay, I have jQuery, but what if I just wanted to use JavaScript by itself? How could I do it, right? And there are ways of replacing jQuery with just vanilla JavaScript, which we'll talk about, the replacement. So that is what's happening in week 6. And then week 7, just before the break, we're going to have test 2, which is all around jQuery. You're also going to be given lab 3 to take away. So you're going to be given a lab to take home, as an example, over the break. And when you come back, it'll be due. All right. So you take a short break. There's the break in the middle, and that's just after, I believe, we have Family Day that week. And luckily for you guys, you won't miss a day, because usually the people on the other section, they have Mondays, they'll miss a day that week, right? But you guys won't. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use your 2 days to kind of record stuff for them, for the other section, okay? We're going to be learning Ajax, which is an important topic. Again, it's data access. We're going to do both with and without jQuery. So there's different ways of doing it, just JavaScript, and then with jQuery. And jQuery makes Ajax easier. We're going to see that, okay? And then you're going to get your lab number 4, a takeaway, and you're going to get your test 2 is going to be given back at that point. All right, and then the week after, you're going to get a small test, test 3, and that's why test 3 is worth 7.5%. It's literally just on Ajax. Okay, that's what it's done. So you learn Ajax, and then you get tested on Ajax. You do a little in-house, in-class assignment kind of thing. And everything will be something that I make you guys do. I'm not going to give you guys heavy-duty concept or stuff that you have to remember or true-false multiple choice. It doesn't make sense, especially since there's only a couple of us, right? It's better that you do your thing. I give you a little assignment that's doable, and you get it done. That kind of thing, okay? You'll be able to use your laptop. You'll have open internet, open everything. You'll even be able to look at my code. It won't matter. I'll give you something to do, and you just do it, okay? So that's test 3 in week 9. And again, we'll do a little bit of a review one day, and then I'll get you guys to do the test the next day, okay? Finally, in week 10, we get into the meaty stuff. And the meaty stuff for me is Node.js. So we're going to be talking about Node.js. We're also going to be talking about things like Express, right? So we have another kind of JavaScript-driven front end that we can use. It's a totally different framework, different way of doing things, and it's going to be server-driven, right? Right now, up until about week 10, everything is something you can most likely, except for Ajax, double-click, like in your folder, and make it work. Although I'm going to give you better tools than that, because I think that's a bad workflow when it comes to developing websites. Okay, so we'll talk about Node for the first time in week 10. You'll be given another lab around Node, and then the week after we'll be talking more about asynchronous versus synchronous entry points. Different kind of entry points we're going to make. We're going to make things like have some kind of database that we're going to tap into, and my hopes is that we can tap into something like a Mongo database or maybe something else. It could be Google's Firebase, but we need some kind of data store, and this is the power of Node. It taps into something, and then what ends up happening is it returns data, and it's interactive, right? As opposed to it being flat. We can make flat websites all you like. What are the 5 common links for websites? Home, about, products, services, and contact us, right? Those 5 links, you see them everywhere, right? That's a flat site. There's no interactivity for the most part with any of that stuff. But what about if I have, in my products page, I show you a bunch of products from my database. How do I do that? And what about if you log in to that database, as an example, and you want to make changes? I want to add stuff to the database, remove things from the database. We can do that with Node.js and some kind of data store, which either is something like MongoDB, a NoSQL database, pure JavaScript, or a serverless database like Firebase. Okay, we're going to be talking about those things around week 11, so towards near the end of the course. And then we're going to get into the file system and how to use more about Express and all that kind of stuff. And finally, week 13, you're going to have some kind of authentication. It says we're going to connect to a local instance of MongoDB. I'm going to get this done a little earlier than this because you really can't do Node without Mongo. And I'll talk about the solution stack. I talked earlier about the AMP stack, and we're going to talk about that again. AMP, which is Apache, MySQL, and PHP. That's a very common stack. But this stack is something called part of the mean stack. Mongo, Express, and we're going to say Angular for now, and Node. We're not going to learn Angular in this course. Angular is a course of its own, all right? But we're going to take 3 elements of the mean stack, Mongo, Express, and Node, so we can call it the MEN stack, all right? No offense to the ladies that are taking the course, okay? But the MEN stack, or MEN, Mongo, Express, and Node, is kind of a really good stack. It does a lot of stuff for you, right? And it's all JavaScript. Okay, so really, really cool stuff. So that's all happening before week 13. We're going to get into that. And then finally, week 14 is our final test, and that test is going to be worth 12.5%. Okay, so that's what's happening there. And your lab 8 is also due by then. Are you good? Yep. So I will post everything as we go. So again, next week you'll get your first lab 1, and you'll get your first interactive exercise. I'm probably going to call it exercise 1, right? Just to make a difference between lab and exercises, right? And you'll know when I say exercise, it's 1%, something like that, okay? Now, we have 4 tests plus a break. We have 14 weeks. So if I take those 4 tests away, right, that means I have 10 weeks minus this one. It means we have 9 weeks. but I have 10%. So one of the labs, my interactive exercises is probably going to be worth more than 1%. Okay, or I might make two worth more than 1%, just to give you guys a break. There might be a one that's worth less. I was also thinking that what we might do is make each one worth 2%, and then you take the top 10%, and then whatever you don't do on the other side, you know, it's going to be. I'm going to let you guys know about that next week. I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And I also want to talk to the other group about that. But for the most part, this is your outline. And I'm going to follow it pretty much as it says here. But what I will do is you'll see everything posted on DC Connect. There's also going to be midterm marks handed out approximately during your week, between week 7 and week 8. You're going to have some midterm marks. So you'll know where you stand in terms of the course, how you're doing, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? That's the plan. Questions around your outline at all? All right, so again, expectations are that you're going to come to class. However, what I'm doing is I'm also recording everything like I'm doing right now. So worst case scenario, if you miss something in class, you're going to get it through the recording on YouTube. And I'm going to post the YouTube link. You actually have my YouTube playlist. This is one thing that's going to be on my playlist. It's going to be up. The other thing is I always post everything up on GitHub, and we're going to be talking about that. So all my code examples we do in class, everything we do in class together, GitHub. You can find it on GitHub online, right? So, and I've already got some examples from the first section. Now that doesn't apply to you. I'm going to make your own. You guys are the B team, no disrespect. There's section A and section B, right? Or section 1 and section 2. I'm just calling it A and B, right? So to me, everyone's equal. And since you guys are second, like I said, this is where I'm doing this recording so that it's a better recording for everybody. Because I've already run through this material once already. Okay. Are we good? Okay, now comes the setup part of our day. And let's get into the setup part. So first thing I'd like you to do is go to this website, code.visualstudio.com. Now this is important because I'm going to be asking you to code in Visual Studio Code all the time. So it's not Visual Studio 2017 and 2019 that maybe you've been used to, right? It's Visual Studio Code, right? So let's go there. Again, I'm just going to click on the link to get there. Here's Visual Studio Code. So a little bit about Visual Studio Code while you guys are downloading it. Please download it now. Visual Studio Code is something made by Microsoft, obviously. And it was in competition before with other editors. It's a code editor, right? So back in the day, Atom was really popular, another code editor, as well as other things. There's other really good editors out there before. Now, I think the de facto standard for web development, and if you look at any LinkedIn Learning course, actually, if you looked at the LinkedIn Learning course, which is great, kind of a platform for learning stuff on the side, Visual Studio Code is like their main thing. Everyone does things with VS Code, right? And we usually call it VS Code, not Visual Studio Code, because people get confused with VS Code and Visual Studio, and it's not Visual Studio. Some people also say it's like a Visual Studio Lite. No, it's not. It's a code editor, right? Visual Studio has a whole different kind of structure. Have you got Visual Studio Code? Is it down? Let's launch Visual Studio Code. So when you get Visual Studio Code, let's go through what this thing is. I'm just going to kill all this stuff for now. And I'm just going to close my editors because I want to say that there's nothing on. So you should see something that looks very similar. Let me just do that again. It will look like this to start, right? I'm just going to close this one off first. And if you notice, there is this little button right here, which is the Explorer. Let's click that. No, I don't want to do that. Let's click this. And you can see by default, I have some kind of folder structure here. What I'd like you guys to do, and I'm just going to see if I can just close the my folder, which is the right way to do it. So when you normally start off, you start off like this. No folder, nothing, right? So what Visual Studio Code allows us to do is get direct operating system access, right? Whereas in Visual Studio, what you see in Visual Studio is not one-to-one with what's on the operating system. Totally different things. Like you'll see some kind of thing with Visual Studio and there'll be some files that are not on the operating system. It's almost like there's a presentation that it gives you, a structure for both a solution and a project. We don't have that here. We don't have a project structure. We just have a folder structure. So that's one thing that's different about VS Code, right? So the way it would work is if I made there's lesson 1. Let's make another one. Let's make a new folder on the desktop. Let's do it together. So I'm going to make a new folder, right? And I'm going to call this WEBD6201. And we're going to say it's lesson 1B. You guys are the B team, right? So I'm going to take this folder, right? I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to pull this aside, right? And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this folder, empty the way it is, and drag and drop it into this space right here, okay? And when I do that, you're going to see that now on the left-hand side that I'm actually looking at this folder. That's what I'm doing. This is just another file explorer, and that's why it's called Explorer. It's looking at whatever's in the content of the folder, okay? I want to make some changes to the folder. I want to start setting up my application. So for now, what I want you guys to do is make a few folders with me. There's a couple ways to do this. If you notice here, there's file, and there's also folder. Let's make one folder this way. So I'm going to kind of make this, we're going to call this folder content. My content folder for you guys is going to mean anything that I put, any custom CSS, it's going to go in the content folder. Okay, that's what I'm going to use for CSS. I'm not going to call it CSS, I'm going to call it content. Okay? And the other way to create a folder is if I right-click somewhere down in here. If I right-click here and go new folder, I can do it that way too. And then I can use something called the assets folder, right? I can right-click down here again, and this is the folder we're going to work in a lot. New folder. We're going to make the scripts folder. Notice that all my folders, I'm using a uppercase naming convention, right? So all my folders are capitalized. You might see other places on the web that use lowercase. I'm using capital letters. So if you follow my way, it's totally cool. We're just following one kind of system or one style of coding, okay? It doesn't mean that my way is better than any other way. When you guys work in a professional environment, they're going to give you a structure that they want you to follow, okay? So there's scripts. The other thing that we want here is I want to make an HTML page because we can't do any kind of JavaScript without HTML, right? So again, right-clicking down here, I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this index.html. Index.html is kind of a standard entry point for your websites, as you know, right? So that's kind of cool. And these are all empty. Let's also add a app.css in here. So again, I can right-click the folder like this, and I can put new file, and then I can just type in app.css, and that'll create the empty file for me. Are you with me? Made a few folders and a couple files, right? If you want to hide the file, you can just kind of collapse it, and that's it, yeah.
Why did you name it lowercase?
Oh, because all of my files are going to be lowercase.
Oh, just the folder.
Yeah, the folder is going to be uppercase. Thank you for that. All right, so my index.html, man, I mean, I could type all my index.html. Do you remember all the stuff that goes in an index.html page? Doc type and HTML5 and all that stuff? Yeah, no. It's a lot of stuff, right? But you don't have to worry about that because this is where we're going to use Visual Studio Code to help us code faster. And there's going to be a system called Embed. It's actually built into Visual Studio Code, a shorthand to help us write our HTML faster because this isn't an HTML course. And by the way, this is not a CSS course. I don't expect you guys to be professionals at CSS in this course. All I'm teaching you guys is JavaScript for the most part and Node.js on the back end, okay? So how do we do that? So we go like this. We type in HTML. Do that with me. And if I type HTML and go down to HTML5, I just kind of arrow down to HTML. And then if I press enter, it does this. Boom. It kind of gives me a little scaffold for my website. Okay, are you with me? I'm going to save that, Control S to save. And here you can see that I have a basic structure for my website, right? I have my meta tags. I'm just going to close this off. You can actually hide and show the Explorer bar, all right? So you can see here that I've got a few meta tags, and the meta tags are kind of describing to the browser what kind of website I'm loading, right? Especially things like this. So originally, the doc type, back in the day, we had HTML4, right? 4.1. And you actually had to specify what that is. Nowadays, all we need to put is doc type HTML. This is a review of HTML that you should know already. Our language, of course, is English because we're in Canada, but you can make other languages in here as well. And that gives you the standard language for the website. And then these 3 meta tags. These 3 meta tags, this is the character set, and this meta tag on line 5 is very important because the viewport meta tag, name is equal to viewport, content is equal to width, is equal to device depth width, initial scale 1. What this does is it says, okay, take my website, whatever that is, and try and fit it into any browser that comes in, that's incoming. Could be a mobile browser, right? Could be a desktop browser, could be a tablet browser, whatever that is. It's going to try and scale it right to the size of the viewport, whatever that browser is. Okay, that's what this does. And of course, number 6, line 6 is all around IE and Edge, just to support IE. I leave it in there. I'm not happy with IE. I don't use IE in any way, or Edge. I use Chrome for the most part, and I'm going to be using Chrome through the entire semester. Occasionally, I might use Firefox as another browser, just in case I've got some caching. Sometimes I want to use Firefox to see, like, okay, this is not cached. I haven't used Firefox. So let's see what it looks like in a non-cache website, okay, non-cache browser. But for the most part, I just use Chrome. Chrome is by far the most popular browser out there, okay? So you're going to be developing stuff for Chrome. All right, let's modify the title. We're going to call this WEBD6201, and it's going to be lesson 1. That's what that is. And that's kind of the title of our website. Save that, Control S. And then what I want to do is I want to connect my CSS file. Now, here's something I'm not going to do. I'm never going to put inline JavaScript. You're not going to see like a script tag and JavaScript inside that. We don't do that. We use a connection through our index.html page to files. So our index.html page is our manifest that connects all the stuff together, kind of links everything in one place, right? That's what our index.html does. And so do the other pages. So here, I want to make a new kind of custom CSS page. I want to link to it. We already have the CSS, which is right here, App Dot Css. One thing you can't do is you can't drag and drop. That would be awesome. And you can do that in Visual Studio. If you actually program in Visual Studio, and by the way, people don't do websites in Visual Studio anymore, unless you're doing a .NET website. And Microsoft has the .NET framework, and that's their solution stack, right? They use .NET, IIS, and SQL Server as their solution stack, right? Which is pretty cool. So that's instead of like a mean stack or an AMP stack, they have their .NET stack, right, that they use. And in that case, if I was going to program in .NET, then yeah, it makes sense that I would probably use Visual Studio like 2019 because it has support for that. It's got good code hinting too. But for JavaScript, yeah, don't recommend. And definitely not for HTML, like basic HTML pages, yeah, no, right? However, right, even though we can't drag and drop, it's not so difficult. We can use Embed again to code some of our stuff. Who remembers, do you guys remember at all, how to add a CSS page to an index.html, a reference? How do I do that? What's the tag that I need to use? Do you guys remember? Huh? Nope. You're thinking about PHP. It's not required. That's PHP as well. It's link. So if I go link, right, and if I go down to CSS like this, so I kind of arrow down to CSS, and if I press tab activates my shortcut. You can see now that I have a link, and it gives me kind of this relationship, which is the style sheet, right? It kind of does it for me, and this href tag, which is the a link. That's what it is. To my website. Now this obviously style.css is not what we're using. We're using app.css, which is here in the content folder. So the way to get to that is to do this. We wipe this out and we do /, which is // says, hey, go to my local folder, look in the content folder, so click on content, and then you can see that there's another little app.css. It just comes up. Click on that too. And then you can see it just does the pathing for you. So it's not that difficult. So again, you can't drag and drop, but you can do this. And VS Code over the years has evolved as well. It's gotten better and better and better. And they keep on coming up with releases from Microsoft to make it the best editor that I've probably ever seen. Okay? So that's really cool. Other things that make VS Code really awesome are all the extensions, which we're going to be talking about later on. And I have a bunch of them active right now. And my page might look a little different than yours just because of that. And we're going to be talking about adding additional extensions to VS Code throughout the semester to make it more and more interactive and better from a support perspective for us. All right, so we've linked our custom style sheet, And of course, what we want to do is we want to have some kind of h1 tag, as an example, that says hello world, right? And maybe we want to put that h1 tag inside of a div tag so we can kind of style it and all that kind of stuff. So normally I would you can actually type div and blah, 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 right? And do all that manually. But we're talking about shorthand here. So here's how you do the shorthand for Embed. Div, inside of the div tag, right, you're going to have an h1 tag. And inside the h1 tag, we're going to say hello world, right? And if I press just kind of space over here, right? So I press my last curly brace. Now there's two ways you can activate it. You can activate it by clicking onto it, or you can activate it by tabbing when you're at the last place here. So if I tab over, all of a sudden it just codes it for me. So again, what if I just did this? That doesn't do it. It's, if I already have this, you see that Embed's not coming up. You have to sometimes remove the last element, like the curly brace, put it back. It activates Embed, and then I can just literally click on it or press tab, one of the two. So if I click on it, it does it. If I erase it, put it back, and press tab, it also does it, right? One of those two. That activates the shortcut to make me do my HTML faster. And it does it perfectly. So I don't want to worry about opening and closing tags. This is not an HTML course. I want to code it nice and simply, and Visual Studio Code helps me. And of course, I spelled hello wrong. Let's just fix that. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And I want to go back out to my folder, right? So when I did this, let's go to my folder. So here's my folder that I kind of put out there. And if you look at my folder, it's identical to the stuff that you see in Visual Studio Code, right? There is no difference. And if I want to run my app, all I have to do is just double click on my index.html page, like this. You can see that it says hello world. But this is really terrible in terms of our workflow. Do you imagine that I have to, every time I make a change, I got to refresh? I make a change, I got to come here and refresh, and refresh, and refresh, and refresh. Man, that's terrible. So we're not going to do it that way. So that was VS Code. If I go back to my PowerPoint, right, we downloaded VS Code. That was the first download. The second most important download is Git and GitHub. So what is Git and what is GitHub? Now, you said you really don't have experience with it. How about you? Do you have experience with Git or GitHub? Not much. So just like it shows here, what it shows here is it's a distributed and centralized, if you will, version control system. So have you ever had this situation, you're coding something and it just worked, and now it's not working anymore, and you don't know why, right? You could do a couple things. You could start over, right? Or you could try and go to your Google Drive and get a backup if you had it there on a USB stick, right? But for the most part, you have no idea what broke your site. Maybe you typed a lot of code, right? And when you typed all this code, it broke your site, or you broke your app, whatever you made, right? There's no way of stepping back, unless you undo everything. You probably can go back and undo stuff. But sometimes that doesn't even work, because you can only undo so far, right? What Git and GitHub does is it versions your code for you. It takes a snapshot of your code. So you're writing, when you get to a certain point where you add a feature, let's say, for example, I just made a Hello World app, right? Git runs locally on your machine, and I'm going to talk about that next week in more detail, right? And what it does, it's just a system. It's an app that you download from the internet. We're going to do that together now as an installation, right? And what happens is it takes a snapshot of your code the way it is, and you can do that snapshot over and over again as you work, right? And then what you can do is you can go back. I can revert from the current way I'm doing stuff, whatever I added, back. Or I can actually look at my code, whatever I had, and compare it to what I have now. Do a difference between one and the other. Right? So that's really, really cool. It helps us. And so that's one of the reasons why we do it. We do it for version control. But the problem with Git by itself is you're locked into using Git locally on your machine, right? So if your machine burns, you have a dog or something like that, and it tramples on your machine, or your machine gets stolen or something like that, or you forget it, or breaks or something, then all your code is gone. Anyway, even if you do Git, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just local on your machine. It's locked into your machine. So we use GitHub, which is a cloud-based service. It's owned now by Microsoft. At one point, it wasn't. It's kind of its own company. Now it's owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft's kind of continuing to innovate and make it better. I think I was kind of concerned when Microsoft bought it. I was like, oh boy, here we go. Another cool tool bought by Microsoft, they're going to destroy it because Microsoft has Teams as well, right? Visual Studio Teams, and I don't like using it. I like using Git. I think Git and GitHub is just better, right? And maybe it's because I'm used to it, right? But actually, Microsoft actually made it better. It's a good community kind of tool that everybody uses, everyone uses, and knows how to use Git and GitHub. And I mean, when I say everyone, I mean all developers that I know have heard or used Git and GitHub. And you guys need to do that too. And that's what we're going to be talking about this semester, okay? So let's get this installed together. So we're going to go to git-scm.com. And again, I'm going to go up on this website here. And you can see that the latest release is 2.24.1, right? So we're going to download this. I'm going to do it with you. I already have it. And one of the questions I had last day was like, I already have Git locally. Is that going to like break my computer somehow? Is it going to mess me up? And the answer is no, it's not. Okay, let's do it together. So I'm going to go down to download Git for Windows. And I'm going to download it, and I already have it, but I'm just going to kind of put it in there anyway. So it's a bit of a download. It's 45.9 megabytes, it looks like, right? There we go. And then I'm going to launch it. And we're going to have it like this. Here's the first page. Are you with me? Yeah? It's good that you guys are, there's only a couple of you, so that way it's not a lot of traffic right now. There's like full class last time, it took a while, and it looks like your laptops are pretty speedy, so we're pretty good. Some of the laptops that I had last class were a little slower, and so it took a little bit more time. Okay, so we're here. We're going to go next. So the first thing is in this first page where it says select components, select everything except for the last one. So don't select check daily for Git for Windows updates, because we don't need that, right? Okay, we're going to go next. Okay, one thing is that it starts off and the default editor is something like Notepad++ or something else. Select Visual Studio Code. It makes sense. We just downloaded Visual Studio Code and I'm getting you to select it as Git's default editor. So whenever I look at anything to do with Git, I'm going to use VS Code, which makes sense. Leave that like the way it is. Next. So again, please select use VS Code. Next, I'm going to choose the last one. So use Git and optional Unix tools from the command prompt. That's the one I want to use. Are you with me? Next, use the OpenSSL library. Next, check out Windows style, commit Unix style, the first one. Next. Okay, I don't want to use min-tty, I want to use this one, right? Use Windows default console window. That's the one I want you to use. Okay, next. I want you to check all of these. Ready? Next. Don't check this. Okay, we don't want this checked at all. And then click install. All right, now I've already done it. I'm not going to click this button, but you would go through and install it again. Okay? Let me know when you're done. And then we're going to do the test. All right? By the way, when we're finished installing, let's close off, while we're waiting for this to be installed, let's close off Visual Studio Code for a second. We're going to go back there in a sec. Just close down Visual Studio Code. Okay, and let me know when your installation is done. Are you done? Okay, are you done? Almost? Let me know when you're done, because I want to make sure that we're all done so we can move on. For the people watching the video, skip. Go forward. All right? Actually, this is live. One thing that I'm doing is I'm not just making a video, I'm actually broadcasting live on the internet right now. Right? So people who are out there, hey. All right, let's keep going. So I'm going to go into my command prompt now. So I'm going to go to my Windows button on the left-hand side here, click onto it, and press CMD for command, and press enter. It should bring up this window. Are you with me? This is the test to make sure that you can use Git and GitHub. All right, so type in git ---- version. Can you do this? Does it work for you? Now, my version says Git version 2.24.1 Windows 2. You might say something slightly different. Are you good? All right. So this is one of the things we did, and we're going to learn later on that we also need to configure Git. We need to configure Git for your email and for your name. Right now, it doesn't have that information. We have to kind of set that up for your email and name. In fact, instead of waiting, let's just do it now. And the way to look that up is if I want to do Git global configuration, if I type that in, Git global config, you can see that there's two things that I need. One of them is the username, and one of them is my email. All right? So username and email. And usually it's first name, last name. So it's git, the command is git config --global. Let's do that together. So git config --global. And then in quotations, your name. So mine would be, Tom Siriopoulos. Right, that's me. You press enter. So whatever your name is, put that in there. And then the next one is git config --global. And then this time you want to put your email address that you're going to be using with GitHub, whatever that email address that you're going to sign up with, because we're going to sign up for GitHub in a second. So think about the email address you want to use. You could use your Durham College email address, DC Mail. You could use something else, all right? But here, my email address is this one, whatever that is for me. This is my general inbox. Okay? I use this for spam, for all kinds of other stuff. All right, and then press enter. So that configures your Git, all right? I'm not going to press enter because I've already done this.
I'm getting an error.
What does it say?
It says key does not contain extension and my
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah. Let's do this. I forgot. Sorry. Try again. Git config ---- global user.name and then the name. All right. Sorry, that would be the right way to do it. I totally forgot. I skipped that part. So press the enter on that one. Are we good there? Good. And then the next one is git config global, and then it's user.email. I'll be okay. And then again, it's whatever your email is at hotmail.com or whatever your DC mail, whatever you want to use. Okay? User.email. I'll be okay. Yay. Type that in. Okay, so what this does for us is it configures your Git to work with GitHub. But my assumption is that you guys don't have GitHub for some reason. Am I right? Do you guys have GitHub or no? If you don't, make a new one. Let's try going in here. So to do that, you go into github.com. Now I'm already signed in. I'm going to just sign out so you can see what it looks like. Here, I'm going to sign out. And when you get to GitHub, it looks like this. This is the next install, right? So what I want you to do is sign up for GitHub, please, if you don't have it already. So go through the process of signing up. It won't take long. And once you sign up for GitHub, make sure you use the exact same email address, if possible, of the one you just used. Now, if it's already taken, reset your password if you don't know what it is. Okay? Or if you can guess what it is, maybe you have a certain amount of certain passwords that you use for some of these tools. Try and sign into GitHub, please. But this is your next, kind of a little install. I'm just going to log in myself, right? And when I log in, this is me. What you can get is your repository. So I might have certain repositories. It'll show you a picture of yourself. Right here's if you want. It's up to you. And then any kind of repositories that you might have in here. Okay. Now, one thing that I can tell you from a repository perspective is I don't use my general GitHub for you guys. What I use for you is github.com/Durham Programmer. So if you actually go there to Durham Programmer after you sign in and sign up, you'll see that I have WEBD6201 from lesson 1. This is from the previous class right here. And any kind of stuff that I put in here, I'll add into our lessons up here on this link. Okay? So this is my GitHub link. And what I'm going to do is up on DC Connect, let's go to DC Connect for a second. Right now I have lesson 1. That's the actual PDF that I have up there for week 1. And what I'm also going to put up here is the link to GitHub for this lesson today. So when we're done, I'm going to make a new link and I'll put it up. Okay, for now, we're not doing it. We're not quite there yet in terms of what we're putting up, so I'm not going to put up a link. And then tomorrow when we come in today as well, you're going to see we're going to update that link. We're going to update the code that's up there, so you have everything that I have. Are you with me? So have you signed into GitHub? Wonderful. All right, great. So now that I've done that and I have Git access, let's launch Visual Studio Code. VS Code, one thing that it comes with that's really cool is something called an inline or in editor terminal. There's a couple ways to get to that. If you notice on the top, there's terminal. And if I click on new terminal, right? New terminal, then it kind of brings up my terminal window like this. And then you should be able to go in your terminal, try this out, git ---- version. You should be able to do that. Are you with me? Can you do it? If you can't, you may have to restart Visual Studio Code because you may have kept it open while you're doing the git install, right? Here's something else that happens to some people. I'm going to talk about it. I don't want you guys to do it, but I want to talk about it for people online who had a problem installing Git and GitHub. And you might have a problem with this one day if you go to another machine. Sometimes what happens with Git and GitHub and with Node.js and anything else I put in, when I look at the terminal, it doesn't find the path. It gives you an unrecognized command, right? The way to get around that is to modify something called your environment variables. Your environment variables can be found like this. Let's do this together. I want you to look at them, but I don't want you to modify anything if everything is working. So if you click on the Windows button, and if I type in Advanced, you're going to see that it brings up View Advanced System Settings. I want to click on that. It's going to bring up this little dialog box, right? And then underneath that, you're going to see something called Environment Variables. This Environment Variables link, if I click onto it, you can see that I have the path variable that's right here. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to put the path of where Git is installed, or where Node is installed, or where, fill in the blank, is installed here, so that your command prompt knows where to find everything. Because by default, sometimes it doesn't work. So if I double click on the path, you can see that there's several programs here that I put in. One of them is my program files Node.js. That is there right now. Yours may not include it here. Yours may include it down here. There's two paths, one for the local user and one for the entire computer. This is the computer level, the system. So if I double click on the system path, you can see that you might have Node.js in here already. Take a look. Right, somewhere in here you might have C program files Node.js, right? Because it does it for you when you download and install Node or GitHub. And in your case, you're looking for GitHub. Okay. So git command would be the place we're looking, right? Or git user bin, one of those two. You might see one of those two things in here. Okay, are we good? So that's what we can do. Sometimes we want to fix it. And the way to get to that is if I look at my file explorer and if I wanted to find Git, I would look at C drive. So I'm going to go to my PC. I'm going to look at C, double click. I'm going to go into my program files first because usually it's program files 64-bit. I'm going to look down the list, see if I can find Git. Here's Git. And I want to see if I can find the Git command. Well, it's not here. It's actually inside the bin folder. If I go to the bin folder, you can see that those are all the commands, right? And there's a path that's up here on the kind of on the bar here. If I right-click and if I press Edit Address, you can see the actual path of the bar, right? So this path is what I want to take and copy into my advanced system settings, into one of these path areas. I would recommend doing it in both places. Do it here, as well as do it in here. Just put that link in there if you're having problems connecting to Git, and you guys aren't. So don't do it. But for people that are online that are having problems, this is what would normally fix it. Okay? And by the way, it'll be the same process when it comes to Node.js, which we're going to do next. Okay? All right, so I'm going to get out of here. And by the way, for Node.js, when we do this next part, it's going to be program files. And if you notice, scroll down, you'll have another thing we're going to install called Node.js, and it'll be right in here that you want it. Okay? For Node.js, let's go and get Node.js now. So up in Node.js, so we're going to say Node.js. Just type in Node.js in the browser. It'll bring up nodejs.org. And there's two versions you can download. You can download the long-term support version, which is over here if you're nervous. I'm not a nervous guy. I just downloaded the current version. And if you noticed earlier, Node, for me, if I type in Node right now, if I go into command prompt and I type in Node ---- version, you don't have it, but if I type it in, it's 13.5. Let's download the latest version, like you. I'm going to download 13.6. Let's do that. So in order for you to do that, please close your command prompt. Make sure that that's closed. No command prompts are open. And let's make sure that Visual Studio is closed again, Visual Studio Code. Because remember, it has an integrated command prompt. So if you keep it open, it won't update, right? So let's go and grab the current version of Node, this one. Click onto it. Download it, right? It's going to take a few minutes, maybe not even a minute for me, 28.4 megs. I just got it. And as soon as you're done, click onto it and install it. The installation for Node is very simple. So I'm going to click onto it. It's going to show me Node right here. And when it's ready, it's going to ask me to click Next. Here it is. I'm clicking Next. I'm going to click Accept. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to leave it in the default space. C program files Node.js. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to leave all these on. All these should be on, just like this, right? Like this. And then click Next. And then I'm not going to check this. And I'm going to click Next and install. And what this is going to do with a little bit of permission from you, it's going to install Node.js. So remember what Node.js is. It's JavaScript on the back end. And you're going to say, wait, why do I need that now? We're not doing JavaScript on the back end. We're not doing it until week 10, right? But we're going to use the Node package manager. Just like you learned pip when you did PHP, right? Or Python, sorry. PHP has something else. What does PHP have for a package manager? Do you remember? Apache, that's the back end. PHP actually has another package manager of its own that it uses. But if you use Python, pip is for Python, right? So too is npm for Node. So we can use npm, the Node package manager, right, to download and install files. I don't want to go out and find jQuery and manually install it in my folder for every application. I want Node to get it for me. That's what I'm going to be doing, right? And this Node and Node package manager has a huge community of libraries and stuff that you can go and grab and install by using Node. Okay, I'm going to click Finish here. My installation is done. And then to test it, let's go back into command prompt. Let's do that. It's command prompt. And type in node ---- version. Now, because I just did it, my version is 13.6. Are you with me? However, for those people who couldn't get Node installed and they can't do this for whatever reason, remember that you have to fix your advanced system settings, right? If I go to advanced system settings and click on environment variables, then in the path, make sure that you put a reference to Node like this, C: program files Node.js, and then press OK. And the same thing goes on the system path. So there's the user path and the system path. Make sure it exists in both places. And for the most part, you'll be OK if you press OK all the time. That's how you'll fix your problem. And then close this off. Let's launch Visual Studio Code again, VS Code. And by the way, notice that my terminal came up by default because I had it up before. Let's close it off. Again, the shortcut for this is Control backtick. Backtick can be found underneath your escape key. So if you look at your escape key, there is a little tilde, and there's also this little backtick character, right? So press Control backtick. It brings up my terminal. And it also toggles it on and off. Control backtick. We're going to do that a lot. Control backtick. Control backtick. Okay? You can toggle on our terminal on and off. Yours might look slightly different than mine. Sometimes systems do some weird stuff. And depending on your configuration of your Windows system, you may not even see any of this stuff here. It might just be completely black, right? Don't worry about it. Just enter. Press enter and you'll see that there's a prompt that'll come up there, okay? It's a kind of a glitch with Visual Studio and what we have here. If I want to clear my screen when I'm in a command prompt or even here in VS Code, I just press in CLS. That's the command to clear the screen. If you were on a Mac operating system, you could type in clear. And guess what? Clear also works for you now because you're using PowerShell. PowerShell built in is something that is compatible with Linux commands. So a lot of the Linux commands will still work here. For example, if I want to know what's in my folder by using command prompt, the command is dir and press enter. That shows me the directory of what's inside my folder, right? And then I want to clear. I can use the Linux clear command like this, clear, and press enter. I can also, for the most part, do ls. And what ls does is list. Try that. That's a Linux command. That'll work too. So you can do some Linux commands here as well. So pretty cool stuff, all built into VS Code, right? Now, what I want to do, right? I'm going back to the PowerPoint to keep us on track. We've done this. We've done setup for GitHub and Git. We've downloaded and installed Node. And now what we have to do is we're going to download and install a couple of additional libraries that are going to help us out, right? One of them is light-server, okay? Let's do that. So I'm going to go back into VS Code. and we're going to use our command. Ready? npm. So that stands for Node Package Manager. Install. Usually npm has a command word. npm, hey npm, install something, right? And then what do I want to install? It's called light-server, right? And then we're going to type in the key, the switch -G at the end. -G stands for global. I want to install light server on the global space so that any of my folders have access to it, and press enter. What this does is it goes out to the community, grabs light server, which is actually a little node server for you, and installs it on your command prompt. Don't worry about these warnings. You may see them, you may not. Remember, I have a different version than you, potentially, or I've already installed this thing, so that's why it's saying these things. I don't want to see this. I want it clear, or CLS. The next one, I want to install one. Are you guys done with that one? Light server? Almost done. Sorry, a little bit slower than mine, right? The next one that you want to do when you're ready, let me know when you're ready. npm install, and you want to install yarn. -G again for global. What yarn does is it's like npm on steroids. It actually gives us additional functionality that npm doesn't give us, and it has access to stuff that works a lot faster. It actually works much faster than npm for getting stuff. So let's get yarn and press -G and press enter. And what this does is going to go out and grab yarn, and we're done. It should be like a really quick download, right? Great. Now that you've got this, let's clear the screen. And let's type in light-server at the command prompt, like this, light-server. And if everything went right, it's going to pull up this. Look what it says here on the top right. It said browser sync, right? What does browser sync do? It's actually pretty awesome. So if I was to pull this one over here to the side, let's just make this take up half the screen here. So when I work, I kind of have one side of my screen like this, and the other side of my screen is my code, right? So I kind of bring my code into the other side of my screen. So I have like maybe 2 screens, you know, as an example. And most developers work like kind of like this. And let's suppose, I'm just going to kind of close these off, right? And you can see that this is hello world. What if I wanted to make a change? I'm testing a change, right? On the left, yeah? For you? Even though you installed it? You may have to reboot your, restart Visual Studio Code. Try that again. That's weird that you didn't get that. I didn't get that problem. And we know what might fix it? Advanced system settings. We may have to go and do that. And we may have to go do that for you. If your light server is not working, if you're getting an error, thank you for that. When you try and restart Visual Studio Code, does it work? No? And for you? It does work for you. But it doesn't work even if you restart Visual Studio Code. Do you have another command prompt open somewhere?
No.
All right. You want to try it again, you mean? Well, to try it again, control backtick, and I'm just going to stop this for a second. So again, to stop the server, press Control C if you already have it running. But basically what you can do is you can just type in the up arrow. The up arrow keeps track of all the commands that you just typed in. So if I type in my up arrow, you can see that I can go back to npm install light server and press enter. Try that again. But it must be -G. Make sure the -G switch is on there. It's going to go and try and install it again. And let me know when it's done. It's a bit of an install.
I installed other thing, yarn as well?
No. One thing at a time. All right. Try typing in light-server now by itself on the command line, on the command prompt. So again, just on the command prompt, you're just typing in light-server, just by itself.
Yeah.
Getting an error still? Okay, so what may be happening is your Node.js isn't linking properly. Remember we talked about this? So we need maybe to fix it. And the way to fix that is to go into Advanced System Settings. So we're going to go into Advanced System Settings. We're going to pull up our environment variables. And in the path, in the user path, do you see C:\program files Node.js? All right, so to get this and to type it in exactly this way, Might be challenging, but we can go into our PC. So bring up the File Explorer window. Go into the C drive. Go into the Program Files folder. Go into Nodejs, right? And right-click on the top on the menu bar. Right-click, press Edit Address, and then press Control-C to copy it. And then go back to this thing and press New, and then press Control-V to copy it in. Now, I already have it. I'm not going to do this, but for you, you'd put it in for the first time. You got that? Yeah, so I'm going to press OK, and then you do the same thing on the system path. Go into the system path and just type it in there as well. Awesome, leave it just the way it is. That's why it probably didn't work, okay? Then press OK here at this point, press OK. And then once you've done that, make sure that you close down Visual Studio Code and the command prompt and relaunch everything. And then try Light Server again. Sometimes that is the problem. Let me know when that works for you, if it works for you.
It says cannot be loaded because running scripts is disabled on the system.
Right. Take a look at that. Can you look it up for me? If you actually look at, if you Google that, that should totally work for you. There's a thing that you have to change, a modification. And I know that one of the other students had the same problem. See, this is the thing that we run into. Every system is slightly different, and this is why I want to do that. So, again, so one of our students got this error that says what? Running scripts is disabled on the system. So how do you fix that? It tells you if you Google it. Running scripts is disabled on the system. And it says, go to the Start menu for Windows PowerShell. Search for Windows PowerShell. Right-click the x86 version. Choose Run as Administrator in the top part. And paste Set Execution Policy Remote Signal to this. So what it's doing is it says, here's the fix. So we're going to do this. We're going to go here, search for PowerShell. Windows PowerShell. Right-click on this thing like this. Run as administrator. It's going to ask me for permission. Here's my Windows PowerShell, and then we're going to type in, or we're going to paste in this: Set Execution Policy Remote Signed. So we're going to copy this, Control-C, and then back in PowerShell we're going to right-click and then press Enter. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, are you sure? And then we're going to say yes to all, A. Okay? Are we good? Okay, now let's close this window off and then restart Visual Studio Code. So we're going to close off Visual Studio Code and relaunch, right? Because I want to always do that to restart the terminal. I'm going to clear the screen here and then type light-server. Try that now. What's the error? Mine still works. I don't know. Okay, can you find the error? So you're getting another error, like not digitally signed? There's going to be a fix to that too. But most likely, if you try it, what's going to happen is you're going to see this. Do you see this? When you see this, the reason why I'm doing this while you're fixing your error, fix your error, and let me know what you did so we can talk about it. When you fix your error, if I change this from hello world to goodbye cruel world, let's just try and change it. Like watch. Goodbye. Oh. If I can spell goodbye. Cruel world. Right? So I want to change it, my H1 tag, from hello world to this. And if I just press save here, it automatically changes it here. It's using something called browser sync. And this is a great way to work, right? You do something on the left side, and you immediately see the effects on the right side, right? And that's what we want to do. Are you there? Did you fix it?
No.
I wonder why that is for you. It might be something. Is that a system that we got here from school, or where'd you get it from? You bought it on your own. So maybe there's some kind of other protection. Do you by chance have an antivirus or something like that you're running? Or some kind of other protection? Because usually what happens is if you don't set it up on your own, like I set my system up on my own, right, from scratch, and when you do that, you set all your policies on your own, right? But sometimes when you buy a machine from the manufacturer, you have an OEM version of Windows that comes with it, and I install additional programs and protections and everything else, and sometimes it kind of interferes with some of the stuff we're doing as developers, right? So take a look. There's a way of fixing it, and then maybe what we'll do is at the end of class, I'll come over and see if we can fix it together. All right? But that should fix most people's problems. All right, so now you can see that. Now, the other way to do it is if you can't do it through here, try doing it through command prompts. So if I go to command prompts, what I want to do sometimes is this. There's another way to do it. Okay, now first of all, you can't run two servers at the same time, so I got to turn this one off. So I'm just going to be Control-C to stop the server. All right, you can try it too if you want. So stop the server. Kind of minimize VS Code. I've got my command prompt open, and I know my here's my folder, right? My folder right here. So what I want to do is I want to press the keyword CD here in my command prompt. CD means change directory, space, and then just drag and drop this over here like this. And then press enter. And what this does is now we're actually in the folder that we need to be in, right? And then if I type light-server here, it should work the same way. Try that. Does it work for you?
Yeah.
Yes. So what's happening is VS Code has some kind of issue, and what you may need to do is type in reinstall light server yet again.
Okay.
All right, try that. But notice that this is working totally, right? And there's something called browser sync. And if I bring up VS Code now and I do the exact same thing, let's change it back to hello world, right? So hello world, right? And press save. You can see that immediately I'm going to get a change right away. As soon as I save, boom, it's done, right? And this is a great way to work. So it doesn't matter whether you have the server locally here with VS Code or in a command prompt. It works the same way. So this has nothing to do with JavaScript, by the way, all this stuff that we've done. This is set up so we can have a good system that we're going to work together on, you and the other classes, so that we're good to go. We're going to be golden. Finally, let's do some JS, all right, some JavaScript, right? We've had this folder open or this file open the entire time, this this scripts folder, right? Let's add a app.js. We're going to right-click on scripts, and I'm going to add in a new file, app.js. I'm going to leave the server running on the command prompt for now, just because everyone can run it. Okay. When I run it, I'm just going to maximize this window for a second, okay? When I run it, I want to start by typing this. In JavaScript, you can type a comment by using // just like we do in C#, right, or in Java. Or a multi-line comment is like this, right, just like we've done in any C-influenced language. Also in C++, if you guys know C++ as well. So in JavaScript, we're going to say, I want to use something called an IFI. Now, this is advanced, but you're going to learn about what this means later on. So bear with me. Just do what I'm doing for now, and we'll talk about what this is. What an IFI is an immediately invoked function expression. That's what IFI stands for, right? And you can also see that an IFI is something like an anonymous self-executing function. That's really what it is, right? So think about this anonymous function. It doesn't have a name, but it self-executes as soon as I write it. So it calls itself. Why is that important? Well, for JavaScript, it's really super important because by default, we have to wait for the page to load before we load up our JavaScript, right? So we don't want to do that. I want to make it so as soon as the page connects to this file, it loads our JavaScript, and it's going to load our IFI, our code block, automatically. And so the way we write it is like this. Open bracket, so open parentheses, lowercase, function, again, open parentheses, second time, right? And at the end of the parentheses, put some curly braces, like this. And then at the end of those parentheses, way at the end, put two more parentheses and a semicolon at the end. So it looks kind of like this. Now, you're going to look at this and go, what the heck is this? This doesn't look like anything, right? But actually, it means something. I'm going to go in the middle of the curly braces here and press enter. Anything between line 2 and line 7 is my code block, right? Just like normal, between the curly braces, right? I'm also, right now it says JavaScript Babel. VS Code has a lot of other extensions. all I want it to do is point at JS. You can see I click down here. Yours might just say JavaScript, right? All I want it to say for me is JavaScript by itself, right? So instead of JavaScript React or JavaScript Babel, there's a lot of other options here that come up, okay? And if you don't see yours, it's totally cool because it showed me earlier that mine crashed, and that's because unfortunately for me, what it is VS Code sometimes does that. Remember, it's an editor, and it's actually running in a really weird, strange way, right? So this should just be JavaScript, not JavaScript Babel. You guys should just see JavaScript, if I'm not wrong, right? The way to fix this is first save it. If you guys have the same problem, if you downloaded some other extension, if I save it and just relaunch VS Code, right? And if I go back here, you can see, even though it says JavaScript Babel, right? I may be able just to turn it back on to JavaScript. And in this case, I can't, which is probably totally fine. It's not going to affect me in any way. Okay, so where it's really cool is this. Notice it says function, and I got this cool code coloring now. That's because of my prettier extension, which I'm going to tell you about later on. Next week, we're going to talk about extensions for VS Code to make it look nice, right? So in my function, I'm going to put another function. And I'm going to call this function start. And underneath my start function, I'm just going to have some curly braces. Notice that my start function itself is now grayed out. It's kind of like it's dim. It's not like a yellow color anymore, right? The reason for this is because it hasn't been used. I've just made it, but it doesn't have anything inside of it, right? I want to do a console.log. Console.log. This is the first JavaScript command you're going to learn, right? The console log is like similar to the console write line if you're used to C#, right? Or standard cout if you're used to C++, right? That's what it is, or puts, whatever you like to use, or printf. It's kind of like that, right? Or system.out.println, whatever you want to use for whatever language you want, okay? Print for Swift, or Python, right? And what we're going to put in here is, app started, okay? That's what it does. We're going to end this with a semicolon. All JavaScript, although it's not required, and this is where some developers go a little nuts when it comes to JavaScript. Semicolons are not required. However, we're going to use them, okay? Because it makes me feel comfortable using semicolons when I write code, right? And I'm sure it's going to make you feel comfortable because you're used to writing C#, Java, and C++, right? So we're going to use semicolon here. So console log will actually output app started to the console. We're going to talk about where that console is. It's not the console that we've been using, the command prompt. It's browser, right? And I'll show you where that is. And then down in here, kind of like on line 9 around, I'm going to put window. We're calling the window itself. This is the actual browser window. Window, that's the browser object, the window object, right? And then type in dot add event listener. It'll actually come up as an option. Just press tab and then open bracket, and we're going to select load. Okay? If you click away, it looks like this. I'm just maximized, so my space looks a little different because I'm actually broadcasting, so it looks weird, right? So load, and then I'm going to use start. Not the whole start function, but the name of the function that I'm going to get a reference to. Notice now when I do that, because I'm using start now glows yellow. It's not gray anymore. It's not grayed out. And a semicolon, of course. So what is this funky stuff that I just wrote, right? Well, this obviously is how you write a function, okay? There are two ways to write a function. I'm showing you the first way. There's actually another way we're going to learn next week. Okay, so two ways to write a function. And notice also that this function is inside of another function. But remember what this is. This structure here, from here to here, is an IFI. It's a code block. Think about it as my enclosure, or I'm encapsulating my little envelope, my container to contain all my code. That's what this line 2 is and line 10. For you, that's all I want you to think of it right now. And it self-executes. As soon as this file is loaded, it self-executes whatever's inside there, right? So I have my start function, and then I have this window add event listener. And what it says is when the window loads, call the start function. So when the browser loads, it calls the start function, and it does this. Save. Now we've written our first JavaScript file. However, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because my index.html has no reference to it. Remember, we need to make a reference, just like we did with our style sheet. We're going to go down to the bottom, just underneath our div tag, and we're going to do the following. We're going to say that script, right? Script, source, src, tab, and we're going to type in /scripts. That's where I put my app.js, and then it's app.js. If you do this, so it's written like this, and I press save, now my app.js is connected to my index.html page. Are you with me? So this is how we're going to do all of our JavaScript pages. They're all going to be connected here into our index.html page. Our index.html page is our manifest, a way of connecting all of our files together for now. Okay? So once we've done this, let's test it. Let's go back to my browser and let's make this kind of minified. I want to see both sides here. And if I right-click on my browser window, right-click, and then if I go to inspect, you can see that I have this little funky thing that comes up. Yours won't look like this. Yours will look like this, right? What I want you to do is change it from this configuration where it's on the right-hand side, go to this little ellipses right here, and change it so it's on the bottom. So the console appears on the bottom of your screen. Click on console. There's different tabs here. There's elements, there's console, there's sources, there's network. Right now, all we care about is console for today. Let's click on console. Notice it says app started. Does yours say app started? If it says app started, my friends, we've connected our JavaScript file for the first time. If it doesn't say app started, something's wrong. You didn't connect it properly or you didn't do something. Or does yours say app started too? That's bad. So let's make sure that it's written like this. In order for it to work, I'm just going to maximize this. Your script has to be like this, ./scripts/app.js. Do you have that? And then in your JavaScript file, it's got to look exactly like this. Do you have that? Make sure you do, because if you don't, if something's different here, or if you miss something, then it's not going to work. That's why you're going to get unexpected token. And let me know when you go back. So then to test it, let's go back after you've made your fix, and you should see, if you save your JavaScript file, you should see this. Do you see that now? Wonderful. And you see it as well, right? That's great, guys. That means that two things are happening here. We have our app started, and we have our file up here. So this is really what I wanted to cover today. So we've written our first, kind of our first little program. Tomorrow, when we get together, we're going to go through progressive enhancement and what that is. Why are we using JavaScript? Should we always use JavaScript? Is there a way of not using JavaScript sometimes? And there is reasons when we don't use JavaScript. And what type of JavaScript are we going to be writing in this course? There's two types. One, DOM manipulation stuff, document object model. We're going to take the document itself, the head, the body, and all the other elements, and we're going to access those elements, hook into them, modify them, add new things, and come back out. That is old school document manipulation. Nowadays, we don't do as much of that anymore. We use a front-end framework for that. Usually Angular, React, Vue, something like that, okay? The reason why we use JavaScript nowadays is to build web applications, not just websites, right? Which is what I talked about before. Creating a website is one thing. Creating a web application is like, I want to have access to a data store. I want to show some data. I want to automatically update the data store. As soon as I go to that website, if something changes, I get an automatic update. That kind of stuff. That's what I want to show. That's a web application. And that's what we use JavaScript for more than anything else, right? That's the stuff I want to try and teach you this semester, not just the DOM stuff. The DOM stuff is the baby stuff, okay? So now that we've done this is great, but I want to share my code with you. And this is for you to see, not for you to do, because you don't have this. But if you want to try this, we can do this together, all right? So here are the commands to put it up on GitHub now. First, we have to go up on GitHub. So if I go on GitHub, remember I created my, I don't have a Git repository, but I do have this, Durham Programmer. You're going to have your own Git account, okay? In your Git account, there's going to be this little plus button up here, yeah? Let's click on that little plus button. I'm going to do this again next week. So even if you don't get this, don't worry about it. I'm going to click on the plus button. I'm going to click on new repository. And normally what it's going to ask me is, what is my owner? Now, I have multiple repositories in multiple organizations. I'm going to choose Durham Programmer here, right? Under Durham Programmer, I'm going to have my name of my repository, which is WEBD6201 winter 2020 lesson 1B. That's you guys, right? And press enter. When you press enter, it gives you some code that you should type in at the command prompt. Look, it's right here. We set up Git for a reason. You can do most of this right now and get it done, but follow me here for a second. I don't need all of this. I'm going to go back to VS Code. I'm going to go maximize this now, and then go to my terminal, control backtick, right? By the way, you can do this on the other terminal, but it's okay if you do it here. I'm going to do git init. Git init is going to initialize my Git repository, and it's going to create an empty hidden .git folder where it's going to store my snapshot, all right? I'm going to say git, next line, git add dot. That's the second command. Git commit -m. Commit is my snapshot. -m is the message that I want to attach to my snapshot. And this time it's the first snapshot. So you can put first commit or initial commit. Those are the two things you can put in there. Let's use initial commit. And then press enter. It's going to do this. So I've created something locally. I haven't connected to my GitHub yet. I've just created a local Git folder. I'm going to clear this. Remember, you can always go up online and look at my video later and to do this later for yourselves, right? All right, and now I want to go back to that Git repository and take these last two lines of code, right? I'm going to copy them, Control C, go back to here and right-click only, which is going to do the hard lifting for me. You notice it already did one command and it's ready to do the next one. If I press enter, it may ask you for the first time to log in to your GitHub account. For me, I've already done this and it remembers, and now everything is up on GitHub. The stuff we've done together is inside that Git repository. If I go back up to this repository and if I press refresh, you can see now that I have my Git repository and all my script is here. The only thing that's missing, and we're going to do another commit right now, is I don't have my assets folder. Why is that? Why don't I have my assets folder? Remember, I have three folders. I have assets, I have content, and I have scripts. How come I don't have it here? I put it up. Nope. It's because it's empty. Git will not put up any empty folders. So we can remedy that. If I go into my assets folder, right-click, I can add a new file. You don't have to do this. And I can put something called a git keep, .git keep. Git keep says keep the folder even if it's empty. I'm going to save that. And now notice on the left-hand side, VS Code actually has a built-in Git and source control button right here. If I click onto this, it'll actually show me the changes that I just made. Look at this, git keep assets, update. I updated my git keep inside my assets folder. If I press this plus button, it's going to add my git keep file, the changes that I made, to the staging area. This is equivalent to me doing git add dot. It adds it. And then I'm going to put a message, added git keep to assets folder. This is my message that I did. Any kind of new features I put in, I put a little message, why I'm making another snapshot. And then I'm going to click this little check mark, which is going to make my commit. This is like me doing git commit -m, added git keep to assets folder, right? And then I'm going to go to these ellipses and press push. And it's going to take my local repository and push it up to GitHub. And when I go back to this, and if I refresh my GitHub, you can see now I have two commits. My first commit is initial commit. My second one is the thing I just typed. So I can keep track of every feature that I want here up on GitHub by pushing it from my local machine. And you can see now I have an assets folder. So now you have everything you need. The only thing you need up on DC Connect is a link to this. So I'm going to go to DC Connect. I'm going to add a new URL. Right, so here's my new URL. And here it is. And this is the GitHub repo for week 1. Okay? And now you have access to my GitHub repo by clicking on that link on DC Connect. Okay? And we're going to do that next day when we get together. We're going to do more of this. and I'm going to add more stuff. We're going to add some jQuery. I'm also today, later on today, I'm going to put a link to our video that we just made, right? Although I have a video playlist, right? What I also want to do is embed the video that I just made inside of this of your file, so that you can just play the video here live, and you don't have to go to YouTube at all. Okay, I'm going to do that here. I'm not going to do that yet because I'm not done recording the video, right? But once I've done recording the video and YouTube has processed it, because there needs to be a process step that has to happen, I'm going to put it inside your DC Connect. Guys, thank you so much for coming today. That's it for me, right? I'll see you guys tomorrow, right? And we'll do the next part of this lesson. I'm going to stop recording now.